I want to talk a little bit about. We're going to Fornost tonight. I've been spending with my alt. I have a lore master alt, with whom I've been spending a lot of time in the North Downs, and I've been learning the North Downs recently. So I'm excited to go to Fornost because I've been spending a lot of time around the sort of the overall North Downs story. And the first thing that I want to kind of add, the thing I want to sort of talk about tonight, and that I'd like to hear from you guys, and sort of any sort of thoughts or questions that you guys had, is what do you guys know, or how much do you guys know, or how much do you not know about the North Kingdom? I want to do a kind of like Arnor primer here tonight, because I know that obviously, this whole initial set of regions here, the whole Shadows of Angmar areas that were initially released with the game are, of course, very much focused on the history of the North Kingdom. But I also know that it's an area of, Tolkien lore that is really confusing, people who read the Silmarillion always get confused about, all the different branches of elves and, what's the difference between the Lyquendi and the Moraquendi and all of that kind of thing. People who read the appendices seem to always get confused about Arthedain and Cardolan and Rhudaur, and it's not treated in very much detail. That's one thing I wanted to make sure that we begin with is sort of the background lore context to make sure that we understand the big picture of what Fornost is and what's significant about why Fornost is significant. We'll go into the more specific details about Fornost later on. I hope to come back and do after we've done the first two instances, to kind of come back together to do a bit more lore talk then. But okay, so we've got Arnor, right? The North Kingdom. What's the capital of Arnor? Anybody?
Montpelier.
Montpelier is not the capital of Arnor.
Fornost.
Well, actually, that explains a lot about Montpelier, actually. But the Fornost was the capital of Arthedain when it was divided, but when the Kingdom of Arnor was united, originally Annúminas, yes, Annúminas was the capital, and the name Annúminas, it literally means the king city, or the Lord city, the city of the king. Minas, you see, it's got the Minas root from Minas Tirith and Minas Morgul, which means city, and Anu means Lord. You'll remember the name that the name that Sauron took when he was hanging out with Celebrimbor was Anatar, Lord of Gifts. So you see the same Anar, the beginning of his name Anna there is Lord, and then Gifts is the second part. So you've got the Annúminas is very simple. This is one of the things, of course, to remember about Tolkien's names, and it's one of the things which, once you begin to see how simple Tolkien's names are, the ones that are derived from the Elvish languages, I don't mean that the languages themselves are simple, I mean that the names, when you translate the names, they almost always are something really simple and really obvious. Just like how in The Hobbit, almost everything is named just based upon the description of the thing, right? You've got Hobbiton, like the town that has hobbits in it, and the river is called the Water, and
fairly unoriginal people, the hobbits.
Well, all of them, but it's not just them. Rivendell, right? It's a dell, it's a valley that has a river in it, right? You've got Lake Town, which is a town that's on a lake. You've got the Lonely Mountain, and Dale, which is in the valley next to it, except in the movie it's on a hill, but don't worry about that. Anyway, so there's again, in The Hobbit, almost all of the names are like that, and really most of Tolkien's names work like that. They're just translated into Elvish. So it's pretty simple. Mordor means the Black Land, and so once you get this and you begin to see these common elements, like the door, right? Gondor and Mordor, right? There's you can see that they have the door in common, anyway, so. Okay, so Enuminus was the city of the kings. Enuminus was the seat of the kings of Arnor when it was unified. After it split up, it divided into the three kingdoms because there was this quarrel among the heirs as to who exactly was king. So they split up. And the kingdom of Arthedain, and that was sort of the main one. That's where the heirs of Elendil remained king. So the line of the kings of Arthedain are the direct, ancestors of Aragorn. They are the direct lineage of Elendil. Whereas the direct lineage, all three of the kingdoms originally had descendants of Elendil in them. That was why they could claim to be a separate kingdom. But in those other two lands, in Rudar and Cardolan, the line of the kings died out pretty quickly. So all three of them were Dunedain kingdoms originally, but Arthedain is the one which maintains the line of the kings the longest. Now, geographically, the geography is often, especially when it's described in Appendix A, that's one of the things that often gets people, you have to really sort of sit down and, go back and forth between the paragraphs describing it and the map in the back. You have to flip back and forth a lot of times in order for that to, make any sense. But actually, LOTRO really helps with the with the boundaries and understanding how that works, because basically Arthedain was the kingdom that was essentially north of Bree, the East Road, which goes through Bree from the Shire towards Rivendell, was the southern boundary, and it was everything between the Brandywine, the Brandywine and the Lune, all the way extending up north. So Fornost, Evendim, those were all in Arthedain. And then you have Rudaur, which was off to the east. So the Trollshaws, that was Rudaur, and the eastern part of the Lone Lands north of the road, mostly north of the road. That was all Rudaur, and then Cardolan was in the south. It was south of the road. And the point that is emphasized in Appendix A most about sort of the most important geographical element for Cardolan was actually the Barrow Downs. They were the ones who had the Barrow Downs and who ended up taking refuge in the Barrow Downs. So right in the very center of all of those realms, if you sort of imagine those as I was describing them as you know them from LOTRO, right in the middle of all those three are the Weather Hills, Weathertop and the Weather Hills. Arthedain is to the north and to the west of the Weather Hills. The Rudaur is to the north and to the east of the Weather Hills, and Cardolan is to the south of the Weather Hills. So it's right where those three realms met, and that's where the wars that divided those three realms were. They were fighting over the Weather Hills, especially since, of course, in the Tower of Amansul was the chief of the Palantir of the North. So they were fighting over, because whoever had the Weather Hills had Weathertop, whoever had Weathertop had Amansul, whoever had Amansul had the main Palantir. So that was the main goal there that they were fighting over. So it was Rudaur that first succumbed. Again, the line of the king died out in both Rudaur and Cardolan, but not in Arthedain. But Rudaur was the one that was taken over by evil hillmen from the north in the service of Angmar. So they were the ones that were actively serving, who were actively serving the Witch King, and helping the Witch King to undermine and destroy Arthedain, especially where the heirs of Elendil still lived. The people of Cardolan, although they were not in allegiance with Arthedain, were their allies in the war against Rhudaur. They were not nearly so much the enemy as the people of Rhudaur were. We're going to do, after we do Fornost, I want to go and do Garth Agrywin in the Lone Lands, and when we go up there, we'll talk a lot more about Rhudaur, because that's really where that storyline is brought out most explicitly in the LOTRO world. So yeah. Not only was Fleana, not only was there a Palantir on Amansul, it was the big Palantir of the north. There were 3 Palantiri in the north, and there were 4 in the south. And of the 3 in the north, the one in Amansul was the boss one.